50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We go to the moon and on to Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going.
We're going.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Welcome to everyone who's joining us today. This is kind of a joint NASA, San Diego Air and Space Museum opportunity on Friday, just before the weekend. We have a very, very special guest with us today, and I'm going to read some of this just so I don't screw it up, because she's actually extremely impressive, okay? And this is, I'm going to introduce Dr. Jenny Gruber. We're joined by her today to talk about NASA's Artemis program. Jenny has a very distinguished background, which I'm gonna read this. So once again, I don't screw it up, and it's totally correct. So Jenny, along the way, if I do screw it up, let me know. Dr. Gruber graduated from Boston University with a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering in 1999. She didn't look that old, of course. During her time at BU, she was a cooperative education student at NASA's Johnson Space Center. In 2002, she earned a Doctor of Philosophy and Engineering Science from Oxford University, where she was a Rhodes Scholar. So bottom line is she's smarter than all of us today, and we appreciate that. So if she starts to analyze any of us, we want to be concerned. Jenny joined NASA's Johnson Space Center as a full-time employee in the fall of 2002, spent 9 years in the Flight Design and Dynamics Division of the Flight Operations Directorate, where she was a Flight Dynamics Officer, commonly known as FIDO. My call sign as a Navy fighter pilot was Slug, for short, little, ugly guy. I don't usually promote that to a lot of people. So we're going to now call you FIDO, okay, in Space Shuttle Mission Control. She served as the entry FIDO for STS-135, the last shuttle mission. In October 2018, Jenny left flight operations to work on the Artemis campaign, which aims to return humans to the moon. We support that, by the way, we're voting. This time to stay and prepare for human exploration of Mars. She currently serves as the cross-program integration lead for the human landing system for the Artemis program. There's got to be a sophisticated acronym for that. I don't know what it is. Or in NASA vernacular, it says she's a steely-eyed missile woman. Okay, so I'd probably just tell that to my close friends. Okay, you know, I wouldn't broadcast that to the world because you don't look steely-eyed from here. But welcome today. It's still morning here in San Diego, and you're in Houston, and I think we're going to kind of, you know, let you say something, and then I'm going to give you the show.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I will absolutely accept being called FIDO. It was a pleasure to serve in that position. And yes, I could definitely be steely-eyed. I'm really excited to tell you guys about this project. If I'm coming in choppy, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video. Don't be worried. But the presentation is more interesting than me anyway. So I'll go ahead and fire.
So bottom line, we're going back to the moon, and Jenny, how are we going to do that?
Before we start, we're going to go ahead and hit the next slide and
50 years ago, we went to the moon. We called it Apollo.
What many people don't know is that Apollo had a twin.
She was a woman named Artemis, goddess of the moon.
We are returning to the moon
as a new generation of explorers.
This time to stay.
And to prepare to achieve humanity's next giant leap of sending the first human missions to Mars.
We believe our course will redefine what is possible.
That we would discover life-saving,
earth-changing science.
And that the challenges ahead will inspire generations.
This is our manifest.
For all who wondered if we could return.
For all who dreamed of pressing beyond.
This is your calling.
We go for all of America.
We go. We go as the Artemis generation.
We go.
All right, so as the video said, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo in Greek mythology, and she is the namesake of our campaign to return astronauts to the moon this time to stay and prepare for Mars exploration with humans. We're going to get ready to go to the South Pole this time as opposed to the equator as we did in Apollo. It's going to be more complex and a more ambitious campaign, so it's very exciting. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what are we going to do? As I said, we're going to the South Pole, which is a little more challenging to get to, both in the kinds of rockets that you need and also because there are deep craters and high mountain ranges. So it's a little bit more challenging to land, but the science and engineering payoff is higher. I'm not a lunar scientist, so I can't tell you much about the advanced science, but I do know because of the way craters hit the moon and they're a little more, the craters are a little, sorry, the way meteors hit the moon and the craters are a little more protected at the poles, we actually get more interesting ejecta. So ejecta are the rocks and soil that get pushed out when the crater or when the meteors hit the moon. And as it turns out, because they're more protected at the poles, we can see older soil and rock samples, and we can learn more about how the moon was made, which I think is really cool. But being an engineer, I'm more excited about how we can build a lunar base at the South Pole. We're going to be looking to park our lunar base near what are called permanently shaded regions. So the sun doesn't shine in some places on the South Pole ever because the craters are so deep. And inside there are deposits of ice that we can use to create water and make our bases more sustainable. We can also use the lunar soil to create rocket propulsion, rocket propellant that will help us make the entire campaign more sustainable as we go up and down to and from the surface. So the South Pole is more challenging to get to, but our campaign is more ambitious in general. We'll be doing some really exciting work there. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So why can't we just grab an old space shuttle or a SpaceX Falcon 9 and Dragon and send them off to the moon? Well, the answer is shown here. The moon's a lot further away. So the space station is currently flying about 250 miles above the Earth, give or take. The rockets to get the cargo and people vehicles to the space station only need to hit about 17,500 miles per hour. And I said only because it's a lot slower than what we need to get to the moon. Re-entering the Earth from the space station near maximum temperatures that the spacecraft sees are about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The moon, on the other hand, is about 250,000 miles away from Earth. right? So 1,000 times further away from Earth than the space station. And our rockets have to get the spacecraft up to 24,700 miles per hour. And instead of a wing shape like the space shuttle, now you need a capsule because your heat shield needs to be a lot stronger with that 5,200 degrees Fahrenheit re-entry. Also, the G-forces are higher. The forces on the vehicle, stressing the vehicle as it comes in for an entry. So if we tried to fly the shuttle back from the moon, the wings would rip off as we come in for a landing. That's no good. You need the capsule to be coming in safely. And then Mars is actually about another 1,000 times further. At its closest point, you can see there's about 39 million miles away, but at its furthest, it's closer to 400 to 500 million miles away. And we need to get to 26,800 miles per hour to get the Earth's influence enough to get to Mars. And your re-entry for Mars is looking at 6,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, going to and from Mars takes about 6 months to a year. We called it 9 months on the slide. So a Mars mission would be about 2 years total. Mars gets closest to the Earth about once every 2 years. And that's when we would try to get there when it's at its closest point. And then the astronauts would hang out on the surface until they could then return when it comes back to its closest point. So it's a 2-year mission. And when they're out at the furthest point, communications delays are up to 20 minutes each way. So if we wanted to try to talk to astronauts on the Martian surface when they're the furthest from the Earth, it would take 20 minutes for them to get a message, and then 20 minutes to talk back to us. So you can imagine they have to be a lot more autonomous. They're by themselves. They will have to know how to operate on their own. And that's part of on the moon. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So since we can't just hop on a current rocket, we are building one. This is the Space Launch System. When it is fully capable, it will be the most powerful rocket on Earth. Those of you shuttle fans will recognize some shuttle components on it, and I'll go ahead and point those out. I'm going to point out all the components of this rocket, but don't worry, there's no quiz. And we'll be watching a video later where you'll see some of them in action. So the 2 white rockets on the side are space shuttle solid rocket boosters, but they're a little bit longer because we need more propellant, again, to get the rocket going faster and escaping the Earth's gravitational influence. You'll see at the very bottom of the rocket what looks like a space shuttle main engine, because it is. Those are repurposed space shuttle main engines. Only the core stage for the SLS, the Space Launch System, has 4 engines instead of the shuttle's 3. Orange part, and there are liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen tanks in there, so that's the rocket propellant for the core stage, and again, very similar to the shuttle external tank. You can see the orange part tapers up at the top. That's the fairing, and it's covering our upper stage. So once the core stage is done, an upper stage is going to take over to get the Orion ship into orbit and out to the moon. And you'll see a video with that in a minute. And then there's the sort of bigger white part is covering up when it's launching. It's covering up the Apollo capsule. So you can't actually see the crew capsule in there or the European service module, but there'll be a better picture of that in a minute. And then the little pointy part on top is called the launch abort system. So in the early part of the launch and ascent, if Orion is not high enough yet and it needs to get away from the rocket, something's wrong, it needs to be high enough for its parachutes to deploy and carry it safely down to the ocean. So if it's still in the launch, that launch abort system, that little rocket on top, will pop the Orion off of the core stage, set it up high enough and in the right attitude to deploy its parachutes and land safely. We hope we never have to use it. So hopefully it pops off later in the launch by itself, and it just goes away on its own. And then Orion keeps going. That's what we want to see. And like I said, there'll be a video on this later. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is the actual Artemis I SLS core stage. It's being tested right now. It's what's called load testing. So they're putting different forces on it and shaking it up a little bit to make sure it can survive launch. And that will actually be flying next year. Go ahead. This is a picture of the Orion spacecraft. So you'll see it has that Hershey kiss shape that the Apollo crew module had, except this crew module is 30% larger than Apollo. Instead of 3 astronauts sitting side by side in couches, we're going to have 4 astronauts, and there will be 2 sitting up kind of on top and then 2 sitting below them. Their seats are on some special structures that have great shock absorption. So this is one of the advancements that we have. So this is one of the more ambitious parts of the mission. Instead of 3 astronauts, we are sending 4. You can see the solar arrays deployed there. They are part of the European Service Module. There'll be a better picture of the European Service Module later, but I do want to point out that we are taking advantage of all these lessons that we've learned with the International Space Station in cooperating with our international partners. So Europe is building our service module, and they are using a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine as their engine. So it's a really neat cooperation and reuse of technology to try to get developed as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. Next slide. Isn't it cute? This is the actual Artemis I Orion spaceship with the crew capsule there on top, the shiny part. That's where the there will be no astronauts, sorry, on Artemis I. That will be empty because Artemis I is a test flight. So we're not gonna have any people on board for that one. But we will have their couches set up and maybe some pretend humans like mannequins that we put on there to get readings on all the forces and whatnot that they're experiencing. Underneath there, that white part, there's that European Service Module. And then I don't know if you can see very well, but in the middle of the picture in between those 2 engineers there, there's a little black engine bell shape at the bottom of the European Service Module. That's that Orbital Maneuvering System engine. And that is the one that's going to fly next year. Go ahead on the next one. And they're all put together. The Orion spaceship is put together on top of the SLS rocket in this famous building. This is the Vehicle Assembly Building in Florida. I have visited twice. It is impressive no matter how many times you see it. It is 50-some stories high, so imagine just a few skyscrapers all stuck together, except it is big and open inside. It's pretty amazing. So they will be stacking everything in there just like they did back in Apollo. This is the same building that they used to stack all the Apollo rockets. It's also survived a few hurricanes, so go VAB. That's down in Florida at the Kennedy Space Center. And speaking of Kennedy Space Center, go ahead and give me one more slide. This is a picture of the launch site from which we will be launching the Artemis rocket. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, that's a former shuttle launch pad that has been fixed up for the SLS. In the sort of right side of the picture, you see there the crawler with the SLS mobile launch platform on there. And our landing and recovery folks are also stationed at Kennedy Space Center, but they travel out to San Diego for recovery because, as it turns out, we will be targeting recovery in a training area about 40 nautical miles off the coast of San Diego. And they work with the Navy on this. So again, we have a capsule, it's coming in fast, and it has a parachute deploy system to slow it down. It's really safer to land in the ocean in that kind of entry. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, that's from a practice sort of test that they did to practice recovery operations. That's not an actual Orion capsule in the ocean. We don't want to get salt water on that thing before it flies. So this is just a training article. So it's kind of a pretend Orion that's the exact size and weight. And it's got similar handholds and whatnot on the outside as Orion will have, so that our landing and recovery and Navy friends can practice the capsule recovery. The big red balls on top are the uprighting systems. So if the capsule lands sideways or upside down, those will inflate to pop it back right side up. And then our Navy friends roll up in a ship that has, it's called a well deck recovery, what we do. So this Navy ship, it can sort of flood the underneath part of it, the lower decks. And it then, they attach the Orion to some cables and they pull it in by a winch, and then they let the water out so that we can access Orion. So that's how we're gonna recover it. It's a really neat operation. I was super excited and lucky that I got to visit San Diego in March before everything shut down, and toured one of the ships and met some of the folks that we work with. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So Artemis I, again, this one is going next year. This will be the first test of the SLS rocket and the Orion spacecraft. So it won't have people on it, but it will go all the way out to the moon. It will go into orbit around the moon, and it will hang out for 2 or 3 weeks, depending on where the moon is compared to the Earth, and then return to the Earth. And on the way back, we'll also be testing the heat shield and the parachute system and the landing and recovery operations. So this will be a full-up test before we put people on board. And right now they're targeting a launch in July of next year, so just about a year from now. We're about to show a video, and I'm going to try to talk through the video a little bit to see what you guys, show you guys what's going on. Okay, so that's that launch complex in Florida. And the flame trench allows the flames coming out of the rocket to be distributed so they don't damage the rocket when it launches. We clear the area about 3 hours before launch, so there's no airplanes or boats in this area. That's the launch control center. And this is the trajectory I told you about, going out to the moon, getting into orbit, hanging out, and then coming back. Again, the launch control center, that's Carly Blackwell-Thompson, launch director. She is a boss. Alright, the sound suppression system keeps the rocket from getting damaged from all the sound waves that come out. Get ready for launch. You're going to see Papa Newton at work. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. That's rocket science.
2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff.
All right, a couple of minutes in, you're going to see the solid rocket booster jettison. And then those fairings are going to come off the top. I've lost sight of the big. Mars. I came to NASA to help with the human exploration of Mars. So I'm very excited that we are looking at how to do it as safely and permanently and with as few resources as possible. And we're going to get that practice on the moon, and then we're going to come out here. And the reason Mars is so exciting is, first of all, it's the most Earth-like planet in our solar system. It does have a little bit of gravity, about 3/5 that of Earth, so the astronauts won't lose as much bone and muscle mass as they do in microgravity. It also does have a teeny tiny bit of atmosphere, but we still can't breathe in it, so we'll still need to be in spacesuits. And actually, part of the Artemis campaign is also the development of the new exploration extravehicular mobility unit, or EVA suit, right? So it's a new spacesuit that is more maneuverable. The joints move a lot easier than our old-fashioned spacesuits. So we've learned so much about spacewalks in the past 50 years, and we're going to use that experience to make sure that when we have our base on the moon and when we explore Mars, the astronauts can really move around and get their work done. Mars also has soil where we can grow plants. So it would be a lot easier to colonize Mars than any other celestial body in our solar system. Go ahead and go to the next slide. For those of you who are interested in taking a trip, when you get to Mars, Earth will be a little blue dot in the sky. And that is something to think about. And if you go to the next slide, I can go ahead and take questions. And I'm going to turn on my video. We'll see what happens.
Okay, well, good. Just to give you a little bit of a report, Ruben said it was Zoom that crashed, okay, in the video. So we certainly apologize.
Oh, no.
We've got a number of questions for you, of course, but I wanted to start out with Clara Cole did text in. Why are you going to the moon's south pole? And are you the first woman on the moon?
So first of all, I'm not sure my video is working. We'll see what happens, but I hope you can hear me. And we're going to the South Pole again because there's more interesting science to be done at the South Pole, but also it is a great place to have resources to use for our moon base. So there's ice deposits. There are places up on the ridges where we get sun all year round, so you can put solar panels. So it's partly engineering and partly for more interesting science.
Okay, great. You know, this is just an aside. You know, Jack Schmidt, you know, the geologist who flew on 17, was the person responsible for the rock collection protocol. And this is just a curious question. Has Jack been involved at all in continuing that process? Because he was the first non-pilot astronaut in 17 as a geologist to get to actually go and walk on the moon.
Yeah, so I haven't actually been in any meetings with Dr. Schmidt, but I am aware he does still have conversations. My husband happens to actually work on precision landing and hazard avoidance technology, which is one of these technologies we're going to need when we go to land around a bunch of craters and on the rim of a crater. He's basically working on something that will get us to within a football field of where we intend to land, which is pretty impressive that far out. And he's been at some meetings where Dr. Schmidt has attended. So I think he is still involved. I just haven't been at any of those forums.
It was just a curious question. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so, you know, so many technologies came out of the space program, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and you know, and certainly many technologies that we take for granted today. What types of new things, new inventions or technologies are we going to need to ultimately go to the moon? And as you've indicated, we're going to kind of habitate it in a much greater way.
Right, so again, some of the major ones just to get there are propulsion, new rockets. Once we get there, we're going to be using some of the technologies that we've already looked at on the International Space Station, right? So we've already used the International Space Station as a little stepping stone. We've grown plants on the International Space Station. We've learned how to recycle water. And those kinds of technologies, sustainability technologies, can be really helpful on Earth. I know people who are working in places on Earth and even in the United States where clean water is not readily accessible. And the same water recycling capability that we use on the space station can be adapted for use on Earth. And it's technologies like that that I anticipate when you're trying to survive on the lunar surface, which is so much harsher, being able to utilize what's around you to do we call it in situ resource utilization. So in situ being where you are, resource utilization will really teach us some ways to better use our resources on Earth. And hopefully that will help with a lot of these 21st century massive problems that we have with respect to climate change and sustainability and then, like I said, clean water access. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what kinds of advancements we have in those areas.
Well, that's great. Kind of a two-part question, following along here, and maybe even a third. Are the astronauts who will be stepping on the moon in 2024 already in the system? I know that they've selected a number of astronauts, for the program. Are they all there and kind of, saying, okay, everything we're doing now is to get us, meaning that initial group, up there in 2024?
They've not actually selected the crew for either Artemis II or Artemis III. So none of the lunar crews have been selected yet. That's generally something that's done maybe a year and a half or 2 years before flight. So I would expect announcements to happen maybe next year. I don't have any insider information on that. So no, we haven't selected the people. But we are all aware, very well aware, as we're doing the development, particularly those of us who have human spaceflight experience, of the challenges and the kinds of things that we have to consider. There are also members of the crew office who are involved in the planning. So people who have flown on the space station or space shuttle are helping to give advice on how to do things for this mission as well.
Great. Okay, so, it's kind of a brave new world out there. What kind of opportunities for young women and young men, who are watching this presentation, what kind of opportunities are going to be available, for those young pioneers, young explorers, those folks that want to get out there and be with people like you and join the NASA and all the various programs, because certainly we would tell you it's the most exciting window that we've seen in space for a long time.
Yes. So regardless of gender identity, we are welcoming and encouraging scientists, engineers, doctors. We have teachers who work for NASA, artists. We have police officers who work on site. There's really a variety of careers that are helping out with this. Some of the parachutes that we developed, we had, fashion students and people who do sewing for a living help out with that, right? So really there's a variety of professions that are involved, and every single person on the team is important to that team. I'm thinking of more as I go along: lawyers, business people, nearly anything that you want to be when you grow up, you could probably be helping out with human space exploration.
Well, that's great, and I'm here. I'm ready for you, by the way.
Yay!
So I'm going to go backwards just for a second, kind of circle back. Why is it important for us to go back to the moon and then ultimately to Mars?
Yeah, so from a technological perspective, the case is made for humanity extending itself out into the solar system, particularly as we start to see problems with overpopulation on Earth. I think really for me, the most important thing, as somebody who grew up in a socioeconomically disadvantaged situation, I was a free school lunch kid, I grew up in a trailer park. The Apollo program and this idea that people could go to the moon, it was very inspirational for me. Obviously, as more people joined NASA who looked like me, that was even more inspirational. But for me, the value of showing people that a variety of people coming together and working together on this project, and this time it will be all of humanity, not just the United States. We have a lot of different partners participating in a variety of ways, large and small. And so I'm really excited about this one because, we're really going to see humanity going out on this endeavor and inspiring people. And even if you don't want to do human space exploration, but you see people working together to do something as impossible as going to the moon and then going to a whole nother celestial body, I feel like you would get excited to maybe try to find a cure for cancer, or figure out how to, slow down climate change, or feed and clothe and educate every single child in the United States at the right level, and things like that seem impossible. I feel like we can inspire people by what we do. So that to me is more exciting than technological advances, although those are important as well.
Well, as you know, most of us believe you're with a world-class team, and certainly let's say the public-private partnership, as we go forward is more important than ever. And it's like I said, it's led for a lot of excitement. Okay, what are some of the important lessons that you've learned during your career with NASA, looking at the NASA side and certainly looking at the commercial side also?
Yeah, so I'm really excited that we have more commercial participation in space exploration because it sort of frees up the government to do the further advancements in exploration. And we just haven't had the resources since Apollo to get a mission of this level done. So the more people that you bring in to help out with it, the more likely you are to get it done. So I'm very excited to see our commercial partners involved. Probably the most important thing I've learned is that every team member is important, and everyone has a different way of thinking, and different companies have different cultures, and even different NASA groups have different ways of operating. And to be a good teammate, you have to really be willing to listen to other people and understand their perspective to make sure that you're all coming together to get the best solution to a problem, to take everybody's perspectives and really do the best thing. And given the ambitious nature of this endeavor and the lower resources that we have, we really have to appreciate every single team member and make sure that we all are performing it at our highest level. And yes, I am part of a really high performing team, and I'm very lucky.
Well, it's always fun to be a part of any high performance team. So what's your, because I've got a couple kid questions here I think you're going to enjoy here in a minute also.
Excellent.
But before we get to those, what's your favorite thing about working at NASA? And I think you may have started touching upon that.
Yeah, so I love being an engineer. I'm good at math and science. It's really easy for me, and I love problem solving. I've always been really good at problem solving. So it's fun to do that technical stuff that I'm really good at. As I grew in my leadership ability, I've always had a strong leadership ability, even all the way back to high school, right? So it's something I've been developing. And when I lead teams, when I manage people, which is what I've been doing a lot lately, I think really the most fun part is bringing everyone together and doing what I can to help people get better at their job and perform at their highest level. Again, now I'm working with teams at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville and Johnson in Houston, and they're coming from a variety of places. We've even got someone on our team who was born in New Zealand, so and at a variety of ages. So it's really this diverse group that I'm very excited to be a part of, and to be able to lead those people to individually all be their best and also cooperate. I love helping people. I love helping people be great. And so that's really my favorite part now.
Okay, so we're going to start our campaign. Everybody listen to this. Send Jenny to the moon. Okay, anyway. So just you can send them to the Air and Space Museum. We'll forward them on to NASA. You got to start somewhere, Jenny. So that's the way it is.
All right.
Okay. So we've got some young boys and girls that have offered us some questions, and let me see here. The first one says, Drew's question: is NASA going to build a hospital on the moon? Now I might be able to.
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh my gosh. So when I go to talk to people in person, I bring stickers with me and I give out stickers for good questions. That's a good sticker question, Drew. So I don't know that we'll do that right away. Maybe after we've had the base for a while, we'll go ahead and put a full hospital type room. But I can tell you that part of the practicing that we've been doing on the space station is with equipment for emergencies. If an astronaut gets hurt or sick, there's special equipment on board to like the boards that you see paramedics on Earth have, right? There's a special version of that to sort of strap somebody down so you can fix them. They do have medicine on the space station. They do think about those kinds of things. We do have doctors who are astronauts. So yeah, I can imagine maybe further down the road, once the base is established, having a module that's dedicated to healthcare. That would be really neat.
Well, okay. I think that's cool. Hawkeye's question, I think we've answered this. He's age 5, by the way. What kind of spacecraft are they going to use to get back to the moon? I think we've answered that. So let me go on to Diego's question. Is it hard to live without gravity?
Yeah, there's another good one, Diego. Thank you. Yes. So as it turns out, the moon has about 1/6 gravity. So when the astronauts are on the Earth, they will experience about 1/6 of the gravity that's on the moon. And if you haven't done fractions yet, that's okay. It's basically, when they walk, it will look like they're sort of bouncing and floating a little bit. It's really, if you, there's probably YouTube videos out there of astronauts walking on the moon during Apollo, and you can see them sort of bounce like bunny rabbits with a little floating in between. So there's a teeny tiny bit on the moon, and that helps a little bit. But the biggest problems when you live in zero gravity for a long time, and we see this with astronauts on the space station, is your bones your muscles start to go away a little bit because you're not using your muscles the way you do on Earth, right? So that's the biggest concern, is that then we have to get everybody strong when they get back to Earth. I think the hardest part is when you get back to Earth, getting used to everything weighing so much.
Well, I think that's a great answer, and certainly in watching all the old videos and talking to those that walked on the moon, your description is perfect. Okay, so Clara, again, age 5. I don't know where they get these sophisticated questions at age 5. I was barely trying to just get to school at age 5. Will they start projects on the moon that they can leave behind when they return to Earth, like growing food?
Yes, so this time we're not going to be leaving anything behind too much, because we'll keep coming back a whole bunch. And food is an example of that. It's highly likely that they will have experiments that maybe there's a little gap in between crews, and so they leave them there for a little while. I think by the time we start growing plants, we're going to have a pretty sustained number of trips of astronauts going out there. So hopefully the plants won't be left alone too long. I know that when I leave my plants alone too long, well, I don't grow plants very well at all, but certainly they die when I leave them alone too long. So hopefully they won't have to leave them for very long. But I will tell you, even the Apollo missions, which flew a little over 50 years ago, before I was even alive, they did leave some experiments behind. And most of them are geology experiments, which means they're learning more about how the moon is formed and how it sort of moves. They also have some lasers on there that help them figure out sort of outer space distances and things. So yeah, they actually left some behind for Apollo as well.
Okay. You don't want to leave too much junk back there. You got to recycle.
Yes.
You got to recycle all that stuff. Okay, this is from Henry. Okay, he had several questions, but I think this is the one that we're maybe interested in more than any question we might ask you. When will they build a giant spacecraft that can have thousands of people on it?
I wish I had an answer to that. I don't know. I hope that I see that while I'm still alive. Probably still while Henry's alive. I hope.
Well, I think Henry's young too.
That'd be really neat.
No, it would be, and of course we're assuming you have a crystal ball when you do that. Okay. Couple other things. One of the very important elements to some of the commercial space endeavors that are joining with NASA is the reusability philosophy of trying to use something more. And I saw in your engines, reusing engines from the shuttle and things like that. Are the booster rockets going to come back and land as they have in some recent flights that we've seen?
Man, that SpaceX is really cool, aren't they? I could watch the video of those Falcon 9s landing straight up and down on a target over and over again. The solid rocket boosters won't be doing that. Much like shuttle, they'll be landing in the ocean and being retrieved.
Okay. No, because and it's an interesting question because you're exactly right. To see them come down almost in formation is one of those that you go, this seems to be computer graphics, but it's not.
Yeah.
And certainly, in looking at the philosophy of Jeff Bezos and the Blue Origin team, they seem very, very much in sync, okay, with your and NASA's belief about getting to the moon and some degree of populating it, okay, realizing that it could be an outlet for Earth in the future. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right thinking. I think Blue Origin is a really interesting company. I know people who work there. And again, because my husband works on the advanced landing technology, he's done some work with them. And they're a little more quiet than SpaceX, but they've just kind of been developing. And now all of a sudden they're getting ready to be one of the most interesting company, I think. They're just kind of getting it done quietly. So I think they're cool. I do think it's the right idea. Yeah. Looking at potential outposts and again, sustainability and reusability. I mean, this is something that we understand is important in the 21st century in general, right? All of this is coming from Earth, and it's being made by people. So we do need to be careful about we do need to respect the moon. You did point out we can't leave too many things on that. We don't like to leave our trash. There are rules. But also, we have to be practicing the same reusability and sustainability that we practice in our daily lives, because these things are all still coming from Earth. So yeah, I think that's right on. I'm excited to see that approach to it. It's very different than what we did in the 60s.
Well, one thing I'll tell you, we're very excited about the recovery being in, off the coast of Southern California. You may not be aware of this, but when they were looking at the Orion and some of the hard point, okay, for the pickups and the recovery, and it's part of the Gator Navy is what we call it, the Amphib Navy, how they're going to recover the capsule. They actually came in and did some measurements and some picture taking of our Apollo 9 capsule here. Realizing,
cool.
Yes, realizing there are certainly some similarities. So this training Orion, the one you're going to launch next year, realizing it probably has some. It could be compared a little bit to Apollo 7, except they did launch with people. You talked about simulated people on board. Tell us a little bit more about what you guys can do nowadays.
Right. So they look all kinds of sensors on. We have great sensor technology nowadays, and because there won't actually be environmental control system on Artemis I. It will be mostly sensors to measure what kind of forces they're experiencing and temperatures, right? And yeah, they're kind of funny. They look like people, but they've got measurement devices all over them to sort of give us an idea of what it feels like inside and how the seats work and whatnot.
Well, that's great. It sounds like a really smart play, to get up there and get that proof of concept. And because certainly, the Apollo 1 fire many, many years ago, of course, was a tragedy which led to, the redesign of the capsule. And I'm sure you guys have learned an awful lot because, NASA seems to be really staying ahead of the game. And I think your comments earlier, about the joining of NASA with the commercial elements, just breeds on a lot of excitement, but also, as you said, the different minds and ways of thinking. So, kind of as we wrap this up, okay, and we've had a very enjoyable time with you. This is kind of your chance to freeform it a little bit, and okay, the perfect world for Jenny, is not necessarily for you personally, but as you see this going ahead, it sounds like 2021 is going to kick off, a number of continuous years that are worth watching and for young people worth participating in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we kick it off. It seems a little slow, but there is a method to the madness. As you point out how Apollo built up, we are combining a lot of Apollo flights into one or two Artemis flights. So it will seem like a slow buildup, but within the next few years, we're going to be getting ready to go to the moon about once a year. And the young people who are in high school right now are going to have opportunities to help out with these missions as we start looking at sustained lunar base. Our elementary school friends who are online right now could be helping with the human exploration of Mars. So I'm going to really enjoy watching that. And as I indicated earlier, since I love helping people be their best, and I see that we're in a position now, both as a country and as a planet, to encourage that a bit more. I'm excited that we're going to see much more of our population involved in this mission. It's been on my mind recently that Apollo was, the participation was, if we're honest, white, cisgendered, publicly straight, publicly Christian men. And there were a few exceptions to that rule, and we study them, and that's important, and we should celebrate them. We have to remember, though, that we weren't allowing the participation of everybody 50 years ago. And part of the reason I'm so excited right now is that NASA has communicated, my management has absolutely communicated that we are interested in being much more inclusive. And NASA is doing some work to make that happen. So what I'm really excited about is we will see much more representation of the entire country of the United States and the entire planet as we head into these missions. And as somebody who's passionate about human space exploration, I'm really excited that all of humanity is really going to be represented. So in addition to the technical ambitious, nature of this endeavor, we're also going to see more of a human ambition to this endeavor. And that's really what I'm excited to see, especially being a mom, right?
Well, it's it's very, very exciting. And there was a slide a little bit earlier that really showed very clearly all the opportunities that are available. It's flight directors, it's technicians, it's not just the astronaut side, it's this huge team, okay, that's going to send us back to the moon and ultimately onto Mars. And you just put the slide back up, Patricia did, and,
yep.
And it really is about opportunity. There's so many things to do that we're excited for you. We're excited for NASA, and certainly here at the Air and Space Museum, if we can be of any help, I'll be glad to go up if that's required. And just want you to know, even though I am one of those guys, okay, that I'd be there for you.
We love you too. It's okay.
We
love you too.
I got it. And now we did get an additional question from Clara. Okay, Clara's been a great. How long are you going to be on the moon? But I think you kind of answered that initially. You're going to be on there, like 5 or 6 or 7 days, and more than we have. So
hopefully we'll get to the point like with Space Station. Space Station's been in orbit for over 20 years. So hopefully we will get to that point where we have that sustained presence. And as far as what you're doing to help, Jim, I really appreciate the efforts of the San Diego Air and Space Museum, because you are helping to educate people about this effort. You're helping to get these young people excited. And we really need the people who are in elementary and middle school and high school right now to be thinking about helping out with that effort. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, we believe, and your comments about it's open to everybody, is the real key. So if you have an interest and you're that young girl, young boy, doesn't matter where you come from, okay, it can be yours. And so I think that there's just lots and lots of elements that are going to make it so exciting to watch what NASA's doing, what you're doing. And what we would ask you, Jenny, is on occasion, okay, to ask you and maybe some of your buddies to come do this with us again. Let's keep, everyone updated. we're kind of baiting the hook right now, and because it's a wow. I mean, I truly believe it's a wow. And so, will you come back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the very least, when we down select from the top 3 to the top 2, I would love to come talk to you about landers at the very least. Yeah.
No,
let's make a plan for that at least.
Okay, you got a deal. The Air and Space Museum, and like I said, if you need to borrow our Apollo 9 capsule at all, it is here. You just got to give it back. And if you have anything, now I'm going to tell this to, because I know Patricia's listening too. If there's anything that we can put on exhibit here at the Air and Space Museum that is kind of spare or not being used, but is indicative of the greatness of where we're going and what you're doing, we always tell people that, yes, we're about the history. We want to connect all the dots, okay, but we want to be as much about the future as we are about the past. So anything you guys can do to help that, we're excited to help you.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll let Patricia cover that. She's listening.
Okay, that's why I included Patricia. I knew she was listening. And Jenny, I would thank you very, very much. This is your last opportunity to say anything you want, and you've got a lot of people listening. And let me tell you, if all the people are like you back there, okay, we're proud to be by your side.
I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity. It's been an honor to be a part of this. And again, I really hope that we have as many of the people who are listening as possible, supporting the effort. Some of you working on it in the future, really excited about it. And as it says on that slide, like, we're going, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah, I have on my emails, the ending, it says, don't wait for orders from headquarters, ride to the sound of the guns. And that's what it sounds like you guys are doing, and we're with you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Between 1968 and 1972, America launched 9 human missions to the moon, 6 of which successfully touched down, allowing 12 men to walk on the lunar surface. NASA's next chapter of lunar exploration, called Artemis, has the task of not just going to the moon to create a long-term human presence on and around it, but also to prepare for ever more complex human missions to Mars. In short, everything we must be able to do here, we must first do here. So, what will an Artemis mission look like? Everything is designed and tested with our most important element in mind, the astronauts. This is their deep space, human-rated spacecraft called Orion, built in 3 parts. The crew module, where up to 4 astronauts will live and work throughout the flight. The service module, with life support systems for the crew and its own engine and fuel reserves. And a launch abort system, with engines capable of pulling the crew module to safety during launch should anything go wrong. To accomplish the task of launching our crew and heavy payloads, NASA is building the Space Launch System, comprising of a cargo hold, an exploration upper stage, a massive core stage, and 2 extended solid rocket boosters. Altogether, this is the world's most powerful rocket, and it exceeds the legendary Saturn V of the Apollo era in numerous ways. Sitting on the launch pad, the entire rocket, fully fueled, weighs just over 6 million pounds, 5.2 million of which is just the fuel. Once ignited, there is no stopping what comes next. All 4 RS-25 engines and the 2 solid rocket boosters come to life, thundering our crew upwards. 2 minutes after ignition, the solid rocket boosters are spent and released. 8 minutes after launch, the core stage is depleted and separated. The upper stage fires briefly, placing Orion into a parking orbit around the Earth. Here, the crew reconfigure the spacecraft and check systems to confirm everything is ready for deep space travel. With a go from mission control, the crew reignite the exploration upper stage engines to leave Earth entirely. The exact timing of this maneuver is critical to reach a speed that can escape Earth's gravitational pull, but also put Orion on a course that will intersect the moon days later. Once this burn is complete, the upper stage of the SLS is jettisoned and the crew aboard Orion coast for several days toward all that awaits them at the moon. Approaching the moon, we see the fundamental differences between Artemis and Apollo. Instead of requiring Orion to serve as an expendable lunar command module or to carry a constrained lunar lander, the Artemis missions will take advantage of a different approach, pre-staging. Everything needed for lunar missions will be positioned in advance by commercial and international partners. This includes rovers, science experiments, and human-rated systems on the surface. But it also includes a dedicated lunar station in orbit around the moon called Gateway. Here at this station, we can pre-stage a robust lunar lander and establish a strong communications relay. Designed with open standards, the Gateway can be expanded as new missions and partnerships develop, allowing multiple human missions on the moon at the same time and enabling ongoing science to be conducted even between human missions. The Gateway is also capable of adjusting its orbit to allow access to every part of the moon, something the Apollo missions could not do. But the real key in this approach is placing Gateway in a unique halo orbit to perfect the maneuvers needed for Mars missions. And with the growing list of commercial and international opportunities, Gateway is the ideal hub between Earth and all that lies beyond. Returning to our crew as they approach Gateway, the Orion must match the elliptical orbit of the station in order to successfully dock. Once on board, pre-selected crew members transfer to the lunar lander, while those assigned to Gateway remain on station. The lunar lander system itself is built for 3 unique steps: descending from the halo orbit of Gateway down to a low lunar orbit, descending from low lunar orbit to the surface, and once the lunar mission is complete, launching from the surface of the moon and ascending all the way back to the orbiting Gateway. Once back aboard the Orion spacecraft and undocked from Gateway, the crew fire their engine once to break out of the halo orbit and once again to sling the spacecraft around the moon, placing it on a multi-day trajectory back towards Earth. As they near the end of this journey, the service module is released, and the crew module is oriented heat shield first. Entering Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the friction of air slows Orion considerably, while also subjecting it to temperatures of 5,000 degrees. With the Orion now at just 300 miles per hour, a series of parachutes uniquely tested and produced for this moment deploy, decelerating the craft to just 20 miles per hour for splashdown. With each successful mission, Artemis ushers in the next wave of men and women to explore our moon and prove that together we are ready to go beyond.